This is 91.3 FM, WCW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr.Chris Radio of Horror program. And tonight on the Radio of Horror, we have Mike Schiff. He is a man putting together a documentary on the history of rock and horror and how the two are connected. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Where did this project come about in the recesses of your dark, deep obsessions with horror?
Well, I've been a horror fan for, more years than I can remember. Since I was a kid, my dad got me into horror, and I originally wanted to be a special effects artist. So, I was a huge fan of Tom Savini and Dick Smith and all these guys. And I just started really studying horror films, and ultimately, I kind of lost interest in doing the effects, and I wanted to do more writing and directing and stuff like that. So I kind of went down that path, and then I went to film school and did that whole thing. And as far as metal goes, I really didn't even get into metal until maybe the late 90s or so. I was a little bit of a late bloomer in that sense. But yeah, I started going to a lot of concerts and a lot of events and things like that. And same with the horror. I started going to a lot of the horror conventions and things like that. And then over this past year, I was working with my friend Rob Lucas, who's also very well connected in the horror and metal industry, actually. And he brought me on board to work on this Tom Savini documentary. So through that, I got a lot of access to these conventions and stuff, and sort of the same thing with the metal. And then I just sort of started putting one thing next to the other and said, well, it's kind of interesting how there really hasn't been a documentary on how horror has influenced metal, because you can see that pretty much anyone who's a horror fan is kind of a metal fan and vice versa. So I started talking to my friend Rob. I said, what do you think about maybe we start up a documentary on the history of metal and horror? He said, yeah, it's a great idea. So I just started putting it together and started putting some questions for artists together. And whenever, I was able to make some connections, we just started working. So the very first interview was with Chris Jericho back in November of last year, and we've just been going on ever since.
What are some of the hardest to find bands for this documentary to try and get interviewed? And are you making the connections to the ones that are appeared on soundtracks for horror movies as well, like The Man Behind the Mask or Hellraiser or Pet Sematary by the Ramones?
Yeah, working on that. Dokken is definitely on the list. We're working on that.
Is it Is it Dokken or Dokken?
Was it Dokken or I don't know. I've always heard it pronounced Dokken.
Oh, okay.
But
I thought that was an O in there, not an A. That just came out on LP. Did you see that?
But yeah, because they did a track for the Elm Street 3 soundtrack, and
Dream Warriors.
Back around those days, that's when a lot of like Alice Cooper with Friday 13th Part 6 and
Dream Warriors.
Like exactly. So
they just re-released that as a single. Did you see that?
What's that?
Did they just re-release that as a single? Did you see that?
I haven't seen that yet, no.
Yeah, they released it as a single. It's like 25th anniversary or something like that.
Oh, cool.
I forget what website you can go to. I found it on eBay because I kept trying to search the websites and I didn't find it.
Right.
But then I eventually did, and I think it's sold out. But I think you can still find it on eBay. It's still pretty affordable.
Yeah. No, I'm going to look into that. But they're definitely on the list, and we're sort of working our networks here to see if we can get to them. So we definitely have a list of. I've already interviewed over 20, 25 artists so far, and we still have more to go. But so far, we've been really lucky. I've just had a lot of great connections in the horror business, and also through the metal business. Just from I worked at the Howard Stern Show for 8 years, and that opened up a lot of doors. My friend Richard Christie, who's still there, he played with Death and Iced Earth and all these bands, and he's really well connected. And he got me to meet this person. That person got me to meet that person, and it just kind of went on from there. And next thing you know, I'm getting Corey Taylor, and I'm getting Jonathan Davis, and I'm getting all these different guys, and they all have a real interest in this project. So it really wasn't that difficult. There are some artists and some bands that are a little trickier for whatever reason because of their management and record labels and things like that. But to have been able to get Alice Cooper and Kirk Hammett and all these guys is really, really amazing. I'm really lucky to have been able to get those guys so far.
Kirk had that book come out. Did you pick it up?
I don't have my copy yet, no. but we did get to spend a lot of time with him. I've been working some of his last two conventions, his Kirk Von Hammett's Fear Fest Evil convention. So I've been helping set that stuff up with these guys, and so I got to spend a lot of time with Kirk, which is pretty awesome.
How long is your documentary going to be?
We're looking at probably about 2 hours. It's going to be, most of it is going to be the typical sort of documentary format, but also we're planning to do a sort of a wraparound film story that'll make it a little bit more interesting, not just as, just informative documentary, but maybe still a little more fun. And so we'll have a sort of an opening scene and some stuff will play out, and then we'll set up the next, the beginning of the actual documentary, and then the next segment will be broken up with another chunk of the short film, and it'll go on like that. So it'll be sort of a short film that ties together all the different segments of the documentary.
How is the Indiegogo or it's Indiegogo or Kickstarter?
Indiegogo.
How is it doing right now?
I mean, it's not too bad. We're close to it's about 8,500 at this point. Still a stretch to go. We're trying to get 50, but I mean, even if we don't make that, we'll still be able to continue going on with what we have, which is fine. I mean, the production itself, it really isn't that expensive. I mean, everything that I've captured so far has been out of pocket, so it's not like we really need a whole ton of cash to keep going with the interviews. I mean, the interviews are going to continue no matter what, but there will be some big costs as far as attorney fees and insurance and all kinds of that kind of stuff, which comes into the big bucks. And of course, the film itself, the short film that we're planning to do, that'll rack up a few dollars there. So it's mostly that kind of stuff that the money is really needed for, and it definitely adds up afterwards. And of course, a sound mix for the documentary itself and things like that. All the other production stuff I'm pretty much doing myself. All the post-production as far as editing and everything else I'm also doing on my own. So it's definitely more affordable that way, since I'm kind of taking on a lot of the other responsibilities on my own.
Do you have to deal with a lot with like copyright issues?
Well, yeah, it's definitely going to be something that the attorneys are going to be able to explain, in more detail. I mean,
so that's what we're paying for in the documentary. Your attorney fees.
Oh yeah.
The documentary is easy to put together. We're going to pay for your lawyer.
That's going to be a big part of it, and also, of course, royalty fees, things like that. One thing that we need an attorney that really focuses and has a vast knowledge of fair use law, because when we're making a documentary or something that's informative, educational, or whatever, a lot of documentaries get away with fair use law, which states that depending on the context and how you use certain materials, you can get away with short little clips here and there.
Yep.
We're not counting on that, so we just need to make sure that we're covered just in case there are certain clips here and there that the attorneys look at and say, all right, well, you can't really get away with fair use on that, so you're going to have to contact the production company or the record label or whatever to get them to sign off and probably pay whatever the licensing fee might be at that point. So to some degree, we'd like to use longer clips to sort of illustrate what the artists are talking about in more detail. But sometimes even if you just use a still image, which a lot of documentaries do, then that's fine as well.
There was a list of songs connected to horror movies that had come out recently from GrudgeCentral.com's website. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. One of the first ones on the list is Michael Jackson's Ben, connected, of course, to the Rat movie.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about that one.
David Hess, Wait for the Rain, from Last House on the Left.
Mm-hmm.
He played one of the killers in that movie.
Okay.
Alice Cooper, of course, we just mentioned. He's back.
Yep.
The Man Behind the Mask, which was from Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives.
Yeah.
Let's see. Of course, the third installment, Nightmare on Elm Street. The Dream Warriors, which we just mentioned. Laz Rocket, Leatherface, for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface.
Right.
The Maniac Cop 2 rap. SSQ's Tonight Will Make Love Until We Die, from the Return of the Living Dead soundtrack.
Yeah, and also 45 Grave is on the list there also.
Of course, the Ramones' Pet Cemetery, which, if are you familiar with Mondo Records being in this documentary? I hope so.
Yeah, I do know of them. Yeah.
They have they have a Pet Cemetery vinyl soundtrack coming out, or it's out. You can order it right now, and you get the entire orchestra track for Pet Cemetery. Plus, you get the 2 songs the Ramones wrote for Pet Cemetery, the movie. One of them being the title Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, well, maybe I can get CJ to do an interview for this.
My Bloody Valentine, the Ballad of Harry Warden. I guess that's a rock album for My Bloody Valentine, the movie, the original from 1981. I'm not familiar with that song.
I don't think I am either. I saw the movie so long ago.
And the theme song to Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Also a rock song, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's everywhere. There's so much history behind all this stuff. I think it's really interesting.
Shadow, New Year's Evil.
I've been learning so much along the way too. I mean, even when I conduct interviews, there's, some of these guys are talking about things that I hadn't really been aware of, and I'm able to sort of add that along the way. Like, I remember like Corey Taylor and Brian Slagle were talking about this band Haunted Garage, and I'm like, all right, I gotta look into this Haunted Garage group. And they're a small band out of LA. Dookie Flyswatter is the lead singer, so I found his info and got him through Facebook and interviewed him for this thing too. So it's like one person just kind of connects this person to that person, and next thing you know, you have a whole story there.
Gotcha. There was a couple bands that I had on the show recently with a very great horror connection. They're the same band. They're just members are in 2 different bands. The Altar of Dagon and Sleepy Hollow.
Okay.
They're from Detroit.
Okay, I'm taking notes as we go.
Educating you. Brain Scan. The movie Brain Scan had a bunch of great rock music connected to it.
Yeah, geez, when did man, I haven't seen that one. I remember back in the day when I was really catching up on horror, like when I was a kid. I remember we had $1 Sundays at the video store, and I used to rent like 5 horror movies every week and just binge watch.
Oh my god, I remember that. Yeah, like at Hollywood Video, they kind of did that same kind of a thing. It was like $10, got you like 3 or 4 tapes plus a box of popcorn.
Yeah, exactly. It was great.
Oh god, now there's no video stores anymore. It's all Netflix and privacy of our home. But I want to get in my car and waste gas and drive away and be disappointed when they don't have it. Have to settle for something else.
Yeah, there was a certain charm to all that, to have to do it that way instead of just, I don't know, ordering stuff right on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's just not the same.
No, it's not. It's not. I mean, kids growing up today will have no idea what that was all about.
Oh my god, you know what I mean?
Look at a VHS tape like, oh, what is this?
One of the last rental stores actually closed here in Cambridge this year.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, they've been around for 25 years.
Oh yeah.
And they announced like at the beginning of the summer they were just not. I was just in there, and then a week later the article was posted saying that they were going out of business. They just couldn't do it anymore. And
right.
And you know what I mean? When I went in there, they were completely empty. There was nobody in there, but they had like modern copies of whatever was just out on DVD and stuff. And they still had like a little VHS section too. And they said, "Oh yeah, we rent to like the college behind us. The college kids come over here and stuff." And
it's like a museum.
Yeah. I was so disappointed to hear they were going out of business. I was so happy to find him, even though I don't live in Cambridge. I live too far away to get those copies back on time.
Yeah. Jeez, I don't know. I mean, who knows how long before every single rental shop is totally gone.
I think they're pretty much. I think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might have seen 1 or 2 still in Manhattan here, but I mean, everything in my neighborhood has been gone for years.
Tell me about it. Well, where can people go to find out more about your documentary and to pledge a donation to get a copy of it when it finally comes out?
The best way to go is to go to metalhorror.com, and that'll have all the info on the project. It'll have the trailer, which has a lot of cool stuff in it, and a couple of bits and pieces of everyone's interview. There is a list of all the artists on there that we've interviewed, and there's the link to the donation page for Indiegogo. on there as well. So yeah, metalhorror.com has all the info anyone needs, and it's been doing great. It's been getting a lot of international attention. I mean, we've been getting websites all around the world covering, doing articles on this all the way from here to Mexico to Spain, Italy, even Bosnia of all places, and it's really getting around. So it's pretty cool.
Great. Awesome, man. Well, hey, we thank you for coming on the show and talking a little bit about the history of rock and horror.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Awesome.